Hey folks, my name is Suede, and today we're going to be talking about the worst game features and mechanics in Civ 3. Now, none of these are core mechanics. The core mechanics of Civ 3 are really amazing, but there are some things I don't like, and so here they are. So, the first one is going to be the Despotism Penalty. So, the Despotism Penalty means that any city that produces 3 or more of a tile yield will produce 1 less instead. We'll find the Civilopedia article on this. Oh, seriously, it doesn't have its own Civilopedia article? Wow, jeez. Okay, here it is, right here. So yeah, whenever I try to explain this in my videos, I always feel like I didn't quite communicate it perfectly, and that's because it's a fundamentally a hard concept to communicate. So basically it means that 3 tile yield turns into 2, 4 turns into 3, 5 turns into 4, etc. This applies to all tile yields, food, commerce, shields, but it doesn't apply to the yields in the city center. The Despotism Penalty also has a weird and confusing interaction with the agricultural trait. I'm not even going to get into that, but yeah, it just adds to the layers of bullshit associated with this mechanic. So, the Despotism Penalty is counterintuitive. It makes it hard for players to learn the game, but it also makes this like the Civilopedia is lying to you. But no, it's everything else in the game that's lying to you. So we'll look at this right here. So the Civilopedia very clearly states in the terrain section that floodplains gives a base yield of 3 food. So 3 indicators in the game, because of the Despotism Penalty, that give you the impression that it might not be 3 food. So first of all, if you zoom in, the tile yield says 2 food. There's no indication that there's like a 3rd food being wasted by the Despotism Penalty. If you right click on the tile, it says 2 food and not 3 food. And then if you go into the game settings and you turn on show food and shields on the map, this might take a bit to kick in. Yeah, so you'll notice there's 2 food, 2 little green dots, meaning 2 food from the floodplain tile, which is only the case in Despotism because of the Despotism Penalty. So yeah, in these cases, the game is lying to you, and it makes it really hard to decipher exactly what is going on. And this is really like a barrier to entry for new players. Once players do know about the rules, it's like needlessly difficult trying to apply them. So you always mine grassland. You don't irrigate grassland in the Despotism Penalty, unless there's a bonus resource there, like a cow. A cow you can mine or irrigate, unless it's a cow on plains. You don't want to mine that. You always irrigate plains, unless there's a wine or sugar there. Yeah, and always mine oasis tiles, unless you are agricultural, in which case you should probably irrigate them. And since you don't irrigate bonus grasslands, you probably want to mine the bonus grasslands. Unless you're going into an early golden age, there's no point in mining that bonus grassland if the 3rd shield is going to get wasted. So in that case, you just do nothing. Like neither would produce anything. Both would be lost to the Despotism Penalty. This is so needlessly confusing. And it's clearly difficult to play around because the AI doesn't even try. Like automated workers will irrigate grassland all the time, even in Despotism. I can't believe who like thought this was a good idea, like a good game mechanic to introduce. Clearly there needs to be some penalty for being in Despotism to like force players to switch out. But like literally anything would be better than this. So my suggestion would just be to replace it with bonuses to the city center. Like currently this is what you get in the city center. Why not make this, once you leave Despotism, you get 4 food, 3 shields, and like 6 commerce, like 3 bonus commerce or something like that. That would be cool, and it would be really easy for new players to understand. This shit is not easy for new players to understand. The other option would just show a visual indicator. Like, we're losing a food here to the Despotism Penalty. Why not just show like a crossed out food tile or something like that? If there was an indicator like that, it'd be easier for people to get their minds around, but the game doesn't even give you that. It takes the longest time to figure out. So yeah, that's how I feel about the Despotism Penalty. On to the next topic. So, my next choice is Modern Era Combat, specifically that almost all Modern Era units except bombers are hilariously undertuned when it comes to power. I don't have a problem with overpowered units at this phase of the game, because so far into the game is almost over. Players have the whole game to prepare themselves for the phase, and they have the same options even if these options themselves are overpowered. So it's actually good in a way that there are some overpowered options that exist at this phase of the game, because we want the game to end. We don't want there to be a stalemate the way there is in the Industrial Era, when everybody has railroads and infantry, and it's just a mess. But my question is, why would you design all these cool mechanics if you're just going to make them complete garbage in terms of power? So paratroopers and helicopter drops are the perfect example of this. Both have massive flaws. The units that you actually land are slow and weak, plus your helicopter can be shot down, and you better recon first because if you land on anything, even a worker, then the units that you're dropping will die. But even when you get around all of those factors, your opponent has an entire turn to deal with the units that you dropped. In an era with railroads and a million bombard units, your units are dead and they accomplish nothing. They should at least be able to attack or pillage the turn they drop in. That'd be kind of useful, I guess. So more examples of useless units from the modern era. Cruise missiles do absolutely nothing. Radar artillery are super underwhelming, and even jet fighters are really weak at bombing. So guess how much better at bombing bombers are than jet fighters? What do you think? 2 times better? 5 times better? No, they are 12 times better at bombing. They will do 12 times more damage on average. It's just ridiculous. Bombers also do 3 times more damage than stealth fighters, which, that doesn't sound too bad until you remember that stealth fighters can't actually intercept anything. Bombing is the only thing they can do aside from recon, and they suck at bombing. If you're against a situation where the enemy has little to moderate air defense, then mass bombers is the only optimal strategy that makes any sense. Maybe you can open with jet fighters to clean up the enemy intercepting units, but then you just want to use a million bombers. That is the dominant strategy. Even naval units are also undertuned. They're setting ducks against bombing runs, and they have no health. They just die super quickly. And their bombard does no damage, seriously. The battleship already has less than half the bombard power of a bomber, and costs twice as much. Can anyone give one reason why the battleship doesn't at least have lethal bombard to compensate for that? What possible reason could there be for not making that change? So yeah, the Marine is fine, the Stealth Bomber is fine, Mech Infantry and the Modern Armor, they're all fine. Pretty much everything else, though, is a wasted opportunity, though, so that's why this is a point on my list. Hey, so our next item is cultural conversions. When I mention this, I specifically mean cultural conversions in captured cities. In non-captured cities, it can be annoying sometimes, but it's useful too. It helps clean up border gore, which is especially relevant since the AI likes to plant cities in the stupidest places. If anything, the mechanic can be a little weak sometimes. Once a city gets a decent culture out, it can be hard to flip it, a decent culture being 100 or so. Even if it's located in the middle of what should be your land, surrounded by a million cities of yours that produce a ton of culture. But the culture flip formula is weighted super heavily towards captured cities. It's weighted towards resistance, a resisting city is more likely to flip. A city with foreign nationality is more likely to flip to that nationality. And historical culture of past powers who owned the city also goes into the formula. So these all add up in a ridiculous way. It's common to clear out all enemy cities from your continent and have the AI still flip the cities you captured, even though the AI is only alive on an island half the world away. This one is really unfortunate since you can't turn off cultural conversions. You can turn off it, but it's needed to balance the game. Otherwise, culture is almost useless. In Civ 2, temples costed 1 maintenance and gave 2 happiness. In Civ 3, they cost 1 maintenance and give only 1 happiness. This is because culture was added, and it's supposed to be important. If you turn off culture conversions, you mess with the balance of the game in that sense. Plus, as I mentioned before, outside of recently captured cities, culture flipping works fine. So my biggest objection to this mechanic here is that there aren't enough options for counterplay, and all the ones that do exist are anti-fun. When the best option for dealing with a problem is just raise the cities and take a massive reputation hit, you know something is messed up. A logical option for counterplay would be to station a bunch of units in the city to put down resistance. That would work both as a game mechanic and also conceptually it makes sense. But you can't really do that. You get a pathetically small reduction in the chance that the city will flip. And if or when it does flip, because some cities are so likely to flip that it's an inevitability, all your units disappear when it flips. It's an awful idea to keep units in cities that you think are likely to flip. The only reason you'd want to do that is to put down resistance faster, but in some cases it's just so inevitable that you don't want to do that at all. When a city flips, you also lose all cultural buildings you built when you lose a city. So if you were to say disband a bunch of units for a quick temple, which would be an example of fair counterplay against culture flipping, and the city flips anyway, then you sacrificed all those units in vain. You lose the units and you lose the temple, so you get nothing out of that. And you can't rush until resistance ends, but if you do rush a temple, then the same thing happens. If the city flips after you rush the temple, you lose all the money or all the citizens you used to rush that temple. So like I said, non-existent or unfun counterplay. The only real counterplay options are to raise cities and to stay perpetually at war with the Civ who keeps culture flipping your cities so you can retake them as they get flipped. So neither of these are fun at all. The formula should be reworked, in my opinion. But regardless of that, you should be able to keep cultural buildings when you retake a city that you lost to a culture flip. And units you have in the city shouldn't just die. They should be teleported outside the city. Like, I understand that would affect like the balance of like military conquest, but if it's too much, maybe just give a bonus to defenders in the city that flipped. Like, currently they get one really strong defensive unit in a city that gets culture flipped. Like, they get the city in the culture flip, and then they get a free unit on top of that. Maybe they could get like 2 or 3 units based on the size of the city. That would be a lot more reasonable. So yeah, on to the last item. So, the last item on our list is Great Leaders. There's 2 types of Great Leaders, and all of their functions are messed up. Let's start with the Scientific Great Leader. The first ability is a science boost. This feature is completely broken, it just doesn't work. It will show the tech coming up faster, but you don't actually get the tech any faster. It stalls when there's 1 turn left of research. The other ability that Scientific Great Leaders have is rushing buildings, including wonders. I don't know who thought this would be a good idea, that any Civ can get the pyramids turn 20 just by luck. The ability's fun, but it's way, way overpowered. Military Great Leaders used to be able to rush Great Wonders too, back before the Conquest expansion. I don't know why they put the feature back in on Scientific Leaders when it was clearly so problematic. So that's the 2 functions for Scientific Great Leaders. Nowadays, military leaders can only rush small wonders, which is more balanced. It's strong, but it's not inherently a problem. The issue is how luck-based it is. Let's say you have a very corrupt city with great land. You want the Forbidden Palace there, but you have to wait until you get a military great leader to get it. Otherwise, you have to wait 50 or 100 turns or whatever to complete with 1 shield. So yeah, you want the military great leader to rush that Forbidden Palace. But you could be waiting a long time, and so long, in fact, that you might have been better off just building the Forbidden Palace outright in a different city that has more shields per turn. Military leaders can also form armies, and armies are way, way overtuned in Civ 3 Conquest. The AI is completely unable to both use them effectively and to fight against them. Seriously, I don't know, they don't understand how they can kill an army. Like, if you just commit several units to attacking the army, that will kill the army, but the AI doesn't get that. So they just, like, let your army wander through their land and do whatever you want. And with their own armies, they sometimes just only put 1 unit in the army, which defeats the purpose of the army entirely. And if they put multiple units, it's probably going to be like a ragtag group of like pikeman plus archer plus knight, that type of thing. So yeah, the AI is just really useless with armies. In the case of both military great leaders and scientific great leaders, my recommendation is the same. If you want to keep them in the game, it's fine for these units to be impactful, overpowered even. It's the randomness that's the issue. If you wanted to keep this mechanic, you should have a meter that builds up whenever you win combat with an elite unit, or whenever you're the first Civ to discover a tech. And then when it reaches a certain threshold, then you get a great leader. The system right now is just way too luck dependent, and it's in the stupidest way. So yeah, that concludes the list. Let me know in the comments if there are any features that you think are really bad that I forgot to mention. And let me know what you think of the format for this video. I overlaid my comments on top of gameplay footage. Tell me if you like that better than the PowerPoint slides that I did before. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.